My first reaction during and after reading that book was, what a slut! But I meant it as a compliment. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel and happy Chinese New Year to you all. Today we are discussing the man, my goat, my favorite author of all time, again, who spent his entire life dissecting others. I'm talking about William Somerset Maugham, the old party himself. I know we talked about a dozen of his works in the channel before, but today we are going behind the painted veil to get a glimpse of his own private life. Specifically, we are looking at Selina Hastings' biography, The Secret Lives of Somerset Maugham. Maugham once famously described himself as being in the very front row of the second tier. Every time I read about this judgment of himself, I laugh because it was a classic Maugham move, a self-deprecating shield against all the criticism to protect himself from it. But as Hastings reveals in this very well-researched and structured book, there was nothing second-rate about the complexity of his life. Which, by the way, I have to say, this is how we usually start the book review. This is a fantastic book to read. Don't get scared by how many pages there are, because it's really easy to follow. She tells everything in a timely, elegant, and witty manner. It's very easy to follow the pages and the stories. The book was conducted through a timeline, a very solid review of his whole life. His family, his secret love life, which I thought was the most juicy part of this book. I sometimes were amazed, multiple times actually, how slutty he was. But I meant it. I didn't mean it was a bad thing. I was surprised. I'm glad that someone got laid that many times before by so many people. But in terms of this book, this author provided a very complete and well-researched impressions of every aspect of his life. His family, his secret love life, his magnificent villa, his style, his lifestyle as the most famous writers in the world at that time. He approaches Maugham not just as a literary critic or an author, but as a high society pathologist. She peels back the layers of the world's most successful and perhaps most lonely storyteller, and she wasn't shy about this. In the book, Hastings wrote very clearly that she thought him as a lonely storyteller, that everything he did was trying to make compensation for what he didn't have or he lost. As an occult lover, I can't help but think this is all it's meant to be. His life was like a full circle, the way he was and the way that his past shaped his success. But at the end, the success didn't got him what he really wanted. So the book started from his childhood, and at first glance, Maugham's life was typical and smooth. He was born into a professional middle-class family. All of his older brothers went to Eton. One became a judge, one was a banker. As written in his famous novel of Human Bondage, he experienced tragedy early in his life when his mom died when he was 8 or 9. He kept a photo of her by his bed for the rest of his life, along with a lock of her hair, and he openly declared that he had never truly recovered from the wound of losing his mom. This trauma initiated the famous stammer and the unhappy childhood, as you could read in Of Human Bondage. As a very sensitive and very intelligent boy, he was shy but very sharp. He decided to become a doctor not because of his love of medicine, but just because he could travel with ships to see the world. He wanted to see what's out there in the world. Part of me think he wanted to see if he can find that kind of true love that he didn't have out in the world. The author Hastings then went on showing us how Mom practiced his writing skills, how he finished his medical school, how he kept traveling the world, and how he fought with his destiny of a successful but not happy person through his life. Now, the secrets in the title, I know it must be about his love life because it's a legend. But I don't think it's just about his sexuality. Of course, as his fan, I knew for a long time that he was bisexual. He described himself as being 3/4 normal, 1/4 queer. And in one of his books, I think he dedicated the book to his long-term boyfriend slash secretary, which allegedly was a very handsome man. Later in the book, we learned about his whole and complete love life. So he asked his then girlfriend to marry him when they were both very young. She rejected him. And then he had numerous young boyfriends, which looks like it was his type. He was trapped into a marriage by interior designer Cyril Welcome, who the relationship started as an affair because Cyril was married to another guy before. Then they had a daughter together because allegedly she poked the condom. Yeah, that was I was amazed by how this could happen in real life. But then she was pregnant, so he had to marry her. They had a long and miserable and suffering marriage. They end up got divorced because most of the time Somerset Maugham was just running away from her by traveling all around the world. He's everywhere but home. And then he had 2 long-term boyfriends afterwards. He also had a long-term boyfriend during the whole time that he was married to Siri. Well, he had all sorts of flings with young and handsome men. And it's only after reading this book I realized you can actually find hints of his sexual preferences through his books, because some of his books talked about how naive, young, smart, handsome men got involved in society. Most of the time, this kind of young man was based on his real life experience of dating young and handsome and smart men. Yes, it was all very juicy. I went back through my phone and through the chatting history. About 1/3 of the books, I texted my mom and be like, "Hi, I'm reading this Somerset Maugham's biography," and he already had like 5 different boyfriends and girlfriends. I was stunned. But I don't think love life is the biggest part of this book. I guess the real secret here in this book was about his vulnerability. Hastings traced his icy detachment. He's the ultimate avoidance. Let me tell you, if you think you have met an avoidant in life, you haven't. You read this book and you realize he is the biggest avoidant in life. So the author traces his icy detachment back to the trauma of losing his mom, a wound that was never truly healed. She suggested that Mom's famous stutter wasn't just a speech impediment. It was a physical manifestation of a man who spent 91 years terrified of being truly unknown, unaccepted, unloved. He himself admitted that although he wrote about love and romance, and he always makes sharp criticism and observation about men and women, he had never in his whole life, in his long and successful life, felt being completely accepted, seen, or loved. He was an outsider through and through, even though he was so successful. And I think this is one of the best points about his book. Hastings brilliantly points out the irony. While his prose was transparent, the man himself behind it was a fortress. He was a spy for MI6, a world traveler, a legendary host at his very famous French villa, yet he remained an outsider everywhere. The final chapters of this biography are frankly really hard to read, in my opinion, because it's harrowing. The author didn't shy away from his tragic decline. The senility, the lawsuits against his own daughter, the very chaotic and messy family affairs between his boyfriend slash secretary and his families, how they fought for money, the lawsuits, the scandals, and the mounting bitterness of being old. Sometimes he would just lose his temper in his room. He cannot write anymore, obviously, because he was getting too old. He cannot move. He had a long and painful death, losing his loved ones. It's a cautionary tale for any intellectual. He knew everything about human nature, yet he seemed unable to apply that wisdom to find his own peace. And naturally, at the end, he didn't have his own peace. In the book, there was a quote saying he was a man who saw through everyone but couldn't bear to look at himself. He thought by writing and traveling and mingling with the society, he can find what he lost, but throughout his whole life, he never actually found it. And I think at the end, he still didn't see through what he had missed and what he had lost, what he had actually owned. So my conclusion to this book is, it's incredibly genuine, honest, and open. It's really easy to read. It's fascinating because all that gossip and the way she constructed the stories, you can see it as the stories. It's very hooking. It probably because of all the gossip, it makes it really hard to not like this book. It's elegant, slightly cruel, impeccably paced, and deeply observant. I guess this book helped me view him not as a literary titan. Maybe it's the wrong word to say because he's not Tolstoy, right? But this book helped me to view him as someone who's not just a successful writer, one of the most famous writers in the world, but someone who's just human. He's just a human being. He had his flaws, he had his struggles, he tried, and he was pursuing his own truth, and through his life he tried, but he never succeeded. He failed in finding his own happiness. But that's okay because that happens to all of us and we're all just merely humans. So I love this book tremendously. I think it will be a great beginning to the new year because we just finished celebrating Chinese New Year. If you want to understand why the razor's edge or of human bondage still sting with relevance today, that people are still find them incredibly relatable, you must read this book because it will bring you into a new angle from viewing him. And after reading this book, I felt more connected to him because I realized, oh, we're all just the same, except he's more successful, richer, and he tried harder than me. But at the end, we're just the same. And knowing that brings some level of comfort and soreness to me. I don't know why. Maybe just because everything's bound to end and we're all just chasing something we could never have. Maybe that's how life is. But as a Somerset Maugham fan, I would like to say I got what I want from this book. And I think that's all that matters. That's all for today's video. Thank you for watching. Next video, we will probably talk about a book that haunted me for the whole Chinese New Year festival. But it's worth it. So stay tuned. See you next time. Bye.